bond market drama, and the trillion-dollar workplace silence. Enjoy! Welcome to the Age of Jeremy. My name is Jeremy Quintanilla. Thank you so much for tuning into this show. This show is all about my business adventures and side quest. I own such businesses as 3T Warrior Academy, Freedom Insurance, Q Financial, Age of Radio, and Blackheads, the company that brought you Merlin, the smartest way to track your crypto. And this is a show all about my wheelings and dealings and learnings from doing these businesses all these years since 2017, coming up on 9 years, actually 9 years probably this month, and it'll be 10 years next year that I have been doing this with my best friend, Coach JV, or all as people know him as CJV maybe now. But I have been working with him since 2011, and we are working to take over the world with our friend May and my good friends Justin and Jackie and all of the amazing people at the 3T Warrior Academy, and my good friend Daryl and Toshi at the Age of Radio Ad Space account, which you guys should check out if you're wanting to know what's going on in the audio ad space. But if you want to know everything that's going on with me, go ahead and follow me at Age of Jeremy, wherever you get your social media, and follow this podcast. You're listening to it now. Maybe you're listening to it on YouTube, and maybe you want to listen to it in your favorite podcatcher. You should be able to do that as well. And we also have our Markets Radar episodes. I just dropped one yesterday that was talking about some crazy stuff about LeBron James and the bonds that he issued. Yes, he issued bonds. That's correct. You want to check that one out. And that show is actually getting tons and tons of people listening to it, and that makes me excited. So hopefully you guys are also enjoying this show. Eventually that episode or that show, Markets Radar, will move over to its own feed as we continue to build out the Q Media production empire. But as of right now, it's on this feed, so make sure that you like and subscribe. And if you want to hear me rant about other financial news or financial stuff, I guess, you can listen to me on the New Wealth Transfer podcast on the Coach JV YouTube channel. So check that out. And I guess just follow me on social media, because that's where all my cool stuff is. Well, it's not really happening on social media. That's where I'm letting people know about the cool stuff that I have going on. So let's get into diving deep into the financial world's quietest but suddenly most dramatic corner, the bond market. Bonds are traditionally supposed to be safe, reliable, and utterly boring. But recently, that calm exterior has shattered. I want to read to you directly from a recent report that lays out exactly why the bond market has turned into a high-stakes thriller and what it actually means for your wallet. And here's how the story unfolds. This is from the Wall Street Journal. Bonds aren't, nope, it's not from the Wall Street Journal. It's from Bloomberg's, because Bloomberg is actually putting out some good personal finance stuff. And this is one of those articles. Bonds aren't meant to be a source of drama in an investor's portfolio, yet the bond market swerves this week have been anything but. Treasury yield shot higher, fell sharply, and started climbing again as investors reacted to government borrowing, inflation, the war in Iran, and uncertainty over Federal Reserve policy. For your money, the most important story is where yields settle. Now, analysts are saying longer term, they could remain high for some time, potentially ushering in a world where borrowing stays most expensive, but savers can earn more on safe investments. And again, if you're not familiar with bonds, it's just an issuing of debt that has a coupon payment, also known as an interest rate payment, that's paid to the person that, purchased the bonds. Now, this marks a lasting shift. Savers have more choices, borrowers face more discipline, and investors are being reminded that a good plan is still better than a good headline. Now, generally, higher Treasury yields result in higher mortgage rates. Mortgage rates tend to follow the 10-year Treasury yield because both reflect the cost of borrowing money for a long period of time, right? So we look at the 10-year Treasury period and we utilize that as a marker for when we're doing forecasting or analysis on what we could get in a longer term period of time during a safer borrowing instrument, such as a bond or specifically a Treasury bond. Now, when the market is volatile, lenders and investors demand an extra cushion for uncertainty about inflation and interest rates. This means mortgage rates can remain elevated or even rise when Treasury yields are falling, particularly when markets are swinging sharply. For home buyers, even modest increases add up significantly. A $500,000 30-year fixed-rate mortgage at 6.67% costs $225 more a month, almost $3,000 a year. In principal and interest, then at 5.98%, the lowest rate so far this year. Financial advisors warned that a house may look fine on paper and still be a bad idea if the rate turns the monthly payment into a strain. Now, these higher bond yields are also rippling through other markets. If investors can earn a higher return from relatively safe government bonds, they have less reason to take as much risk in stocks. Now, we're seeing a classic valuation reset where growth stocks become less attractive while companies with steady earnings and strong balance sheets look better. Growing concerns about inflation and borrowing costs are also weighing on speculative investments like artificial intelligence stocks. Companies and projects that rely heavily on borrowed money, such as building the massive data centers required for the AI trade, are particularly vulnerable because higher rates make financing much more expensive. But what about savers? Rising long-term Treasury yields don't automatically translate into better bank rates. The national average savings rate is just 0.38% as of August 18th. Many of the biggest banks barely raised their yields even when the Federal Reserve aggressively hiked interest rates. Online banks tend to offer the best returns, with saving accounts currently yielding 3.18% on average, and some offering up to 3.7%. Savers can also find competitive returns in high-yield savings accounts, money market funds, CDs, and short-term treasury bills, which are exempt from state and local taxes. And treasury bills and or municipal bonds is actually how I save my money. I think right now there's a Charles Schwab account, Charles Schwab ETF of municipal bonds, which means that if I decide to sell it, I'm not taxed on any of those gains because it's a municipal bond. So the idea is that if I put my money in that, I can at least keep up with roughly around inflation, where in a savings account, if I did have something that could keep up with inflation and I did sell it, I would still have to pay either interest income that's paid into that specific account or capital gains on it. And so there are benefits of using those types of instruments. And I think right now I have probably like 50 or 60 grand sitting in that as just my backup savings. Now, for retirees, higher yields create a rare opportunity to rebalance portfolios. They can shift money out of volatile stocks and into bonds with higher yields, generating more retirement income while reducing portfolio risk. However, advisors caution against making big portfolio moves simply to chase rising yields, comparing timing the move to trying to catch a falling knife. Ultimately, the bond market's recent drama is giving investors something they haven't had in years, which is considerably more choice. So if we take off our professional hat for a second and talk about what this actually means in the real world. First of all, let's address the elephant in the room. The housing market is a biological hazard right now. Okay, if we're looking at browsing Zillow, which, let's be honest, is basically self-harm for anyone in a Gen Z generation or millennial generation, because the numbers and the payments and how much it costs to have a house is astronomical now. Most millennials and Gen Zs and Gen Alphas are going to be priced completely out of the housing market. And that's why, in my opinion, it's very, very important that people go and get a college education. People that have a college education are in their lifetimes going to make $1 million more on average than people that don't. It is still the best investment and return of your investment for an average person than any other investment. Now, when the article says that A fraction of a percentage difference on a mortgage is almost $3,000 a year. That's not a joke. That's $250 a month. That's a car payment. That's a solid grocery run. That's diapers for the month. That I don't even think that covers daycare. But still, when we're looking at the price of that, that's pretty hefty for a percentage difference on a mortgage. You can find the perfect house, fall in love with the backyard, and then get hit with a rate spike that turns your dream home into a monthly financial situation, depending on the type of mortgage that you get or when you decide to buy. The mortgage market is basically holding our lives, right, in hostage, and it's all copying the homework of a 10-year Treasury yield. And then when we look at the stock market, seeing the AI hype train get a little reality check, right? But then you can see that that's going to even go further. If you listen to my episode of Markets Radar, Anthropic's about to go put in the documents for an IPO, which means they're about to go public eventually, and they are going to be priced higher than what SpaceX went for their tradable assets under management, also called a TAM. Listen to that episode of Markets Radar if you want to know more of what I'm talking about. So, and for the past 2 years, every tech company on earth has been screaming all AI to get their stock price to continue to skyrocket. But it turns out that running those massive AI algorithms requires actual physical data centers, which require actual physical electricity and mountains of borrowed cash. And right now, that cash is specifically expensive. The era of what we consider free money is going away. And if Kevin Warsh is going to do something that's going to improve our economy, he would raise interest rates going to the end of this year. But if you've also listened to Markets Radar from last Saturday, Ray Dalio doesn't think that that's going to specifically, he thinks that that's going to specifically happen. And if they do that, that could put us even into a more difficult situation. Or they could not do it and not do the other things that Ray Dalio recommends. So make sure that you listen to that Markets Radar episode, because again, either way, we're probably looking at a shit show in 2027 going into 2028. So if your business model relies on borrowing billions of dollars to build stuff, higher yields are going to eat you up. But the thing that absolutely breaks my brain and makes me want to scream into a pillow is the bank rates. 0.38%. That is the national average savings rate. So if anybody's trying to fuck us, it's the big banks. If you have $10,000 sitting in a traditional big name bank savings account, you are making a whopping $38 a year. Meanwhile, they are turning around and charging home buyers nearly 7% interest on mortgages. And essentially, they're lending out your money. That's the way that the game works. It's not all your money, right? But you're leaving your money. If you have a savings account or if you're a CD, you're locking it up inside of there and you're using that money to lend. They are making a killing on our money while throwing us a few loose pennies and expecting us to say thank you. Yet I can put $10,000 inside of Bitcoin at the right time and get a 23% pop in a specific week if I know what I'm doing and I am taking advantage of my own financial future, which is the main thing that I try to tell people on here to do. And if you want to learn more about the system that we use, you can check out the Coach JV channel on YouTube and learn about our Capital DR system and maybe even set up time to sit with one of our sales team members. And that's another reason why people are like, I need to have an emergency savings. You do, but you want it to have in the most liquid thing that is not a savings account, in my specific opinion. At the end of the day, the article was right, though. We finally have choices we haven't seen in decades. We can buy T-bills, we can get high yield savings accounts, or actually retire without having to gamble everything on risky tech stocks. And the most important thing that you can learn how to take advantage of are dividend producing, income producing, essentially ETFs and or stocks. Because again, if you've listened to anything that I've talked about, the thing that frustrates me the most about financial advisors is it's all about building up a big enough pie, eating that pie after you're no longer making income in the hopes that that pie is going to last as long as you live, or a better way to say that is that you don't outlive your retirement portfolio. And that's why investing in income is more important than ever. So again, if you're interested in that, you can check us out at 32wireacademy.com. Go follow Coach JV, because again, my main purpose in life is two things. One, entertaining people through my music, Q media, building really cool creative stuff. And then my second purpose in life is making sure that people end up taking control over their sovereignty of their life, specifically their financial futures. We'll be right back. Let's talk about the silent killer of the modern office. It's not the break room coffee, and it's not the passive aggressive refrigerator notes if you have a refrigerator in your office. It's the silent, staggering, and incredibly expensive breakdown of workplace communication. We live in an age where we have more messaging apps, email clients, and virtual tools than ever before, yet we are so fucking discommunicative. I don't know if that's the best way to say it. We're not good at communicating, is what I'm trying to say. We have never been worse at actually understanding each other, in my opinion, than any time since I've been alive. And that is very, very disappointing. I keep being told that there were things that I don't remember the way that other people remember them. And it makes me think that we had a breakdown in communication. And the way that I think about leadership is, if there is a company that is failing, most companies are failing because of a few things. The main one that I always talk about is that they're not focusing on generating revenue and building revenue. They're focused on all other kinds of stuff and not micromanaging that revenue, finding new ways of making revenue, and focusing on getting more and more revenue. The second thing is their inability to communicate properly with each other, which that breakdown in communication causes people to not have good culture, causes people to not have good understanding, causes people to not understand the English language in certain ways that could cause people to miscommunicate. I'm not saying that like in a dickish way. I'm just saying that the more that we're educated and the more that we understand the words that we're using and how we use words, the better we can explain things to each other. So the whole thing is a giant shit show, because we have moved away. Before I go into the rest of this thing, let me go on a little rant here. We have moved away from trying to be intelligent people in a society, people with etiquette, people with saying that they're sorry, people with saying that they forgive each other, people being ashamed of themselves, of the way that they're acting. We live in a world where we say that if you don't like me this way, then go fuck yourself. And that's not the way in which the world should work. And we should be worried about that, because that's going to interact and cause problems with inside of our businesses. We should all be trying to be better people than we were the day before. We should be ashamed of our actions. We should regret our actions and use that regret to decide to take action to make ourselves specifically better. And workplace communication serves as a critical infrastructure of everything that we specifically do. Even inside of my band, a band with four different people, four or five people with me, Brian, Kevin, Davis, Chuck, and me, 5 different people inside of that band, even had trouble communicating, is people trying to figure out what we were specifically do for music and communicate, and for other stuff outside of music that we were working on. But the point is that communication plays such a pivotal role in everything that we do. And when that infrastructure breaks down, it creates a severe financial liability. It creates an operational drag and psychological toll across the workforce or across our specific lives. Even every time I say workforce moving forward, if I say the word workforce, I want you to picture that I am talking about families, I'm talking about friends, I'm talking about groups, I'm talking about anything that we are a part of when I'm saying workforce. That's how pivotal communication is. Macroeconomic assessments indicate that ineffective communication costs United States businesses between $1.2 and $2.0 trillion annually in lost productivity and wasted effort. And if you think of that from a dollar perspective, think of what you lose, maybe even from a dollar perspective in your own household, not communicating with people. Or take about how emotions are affected by that when you're not communicating with people. At the firm level, these breakdowns translate to a systemic tax on specifically performance. Research indicates that poor communication costs organizations between $9,284 and $30,000 per employee each year for a mid-sized firm with 1,000 employees. And you can extrapolate that and do the math for how many people that you specifically have hired. The invisible drag results in an annual loss of approximately $9.3 million. And when I think about that, from all the things that we have started and stopped and started and projects stopping, and then people not getting together to talk to other people about other projects that they're having and not slowing things down, it fucking wastes so much productivity and money because people are not sitting together long enough to communicate with each other. The systemic drain on resources show up in daily operations through missed deadlines, duplicated work, delayed projects. Again, what I was just saying, delayed projects. Indeed, 86% of corporate executives and employees cite poor communication and lack of collaboration as the primary cause of workplace failures. Furthermore, 44% of workers state that poor communication is the leading cause of project failures, surpassing technical challenges or budget constraints. The disconnect between leadership and employees has widened dramatically. Only 27% of leaders believe their staff are entirely aligned with organizational business goals, while a mere 9% of employees agree with that assessment. Information rarely fails all at once. It gets diluted layer by layer because 80% of employees look to their direct supervisor for key workplace information. Line managers are the vital link in the communication chain. Now, to bridge this leadership to employee gap, high-performing organizations are replacing unstructured communication with formal cascading systems. And this is a strategic information cascade in a systematic process designed to deliver accurate, aligned information across every layer of the workforce, preventing the distortions of the classic game of telephone. Now, this process requires establishing clarity across 9 key elements. And again, the reason why I call this my business adventures and side quests is because these are things that I'm dealing with. And I use this as a way to research things that I want to then learn and then implement. And if I remember to, I can come back and talk to them about this on the calls with you in the future if I remember to. Usually I'm doing so many things on so many businesses that I'm like, what am I dealing with? Let me do some research on that. Let me talk about it on my podcast and hope people enjoy it. But back to those priorities. The priorities are critical audiences, audience-specific objectives, core messages, packaging, communication channels, delivery frequency, and my favorite of all time, feedback loops. Specifically, executives must brief managers first, delivering strategic brief 24 to 40 hours before broad team announcements. Now, this advance warning allows managers to process the change, ask questions, and prepare answers for their teams. A strategic alignment is driven by purpose, so when employees understand the why behind a decision before the what and how, they are far more likely to show genuine commitment rather than simple compliance. And so when I think about this one, this is one of the things I'm trying to, even on small scales, get better at. Give deliverables or the things that we need to talk about at meetings 24 to 48 hours beforehand, and then expect people to read those things prior to the specific meeting. The problem that arises with what we ended up doing, and one of the main things that I'm hoping that doesn't fall on to other people when they're starting businesses, is One, we didn't hire enough managers at the get-go because we were a very small startup without any actual funding. So the fact that we bootstrapped our way for the most part to an $8 million a year business is astronomical. But the point is that at the beginning, we didn't have the ability to do that. And we were also chasing different sources of revenue rather than focusing on get more of the same revenue in the same similar line of business rather than a completely different business entity. So one of the biggest problems that I see for us is that what ended up happening is we thinned ourselves too thin. And so there's only so many amount of hours that a person can work before their willpower and their efficiency just becomes useless. And everybody's probably different. Most people on average is somewhere between 50 and 55. Ford, the truck guy, he did some research and found that the good like labor, like anything over 40 hours for like labor intensive jobs is too much. Knowledge workers is still very similar. It's just the tiredness is a little bit different, right? And so it's probably more towards like 48 or maybe 50 hours. So when you get up to 55 hours on average, most people become completely useless. And I've been studying that for myself over the last year and found that I become completely useless. So that has required me to not do certain things and do other things, and then push people to do other things, and then use my own money to buy more resources so that we can have the ability where I can do more and more things. And so now that that's starting to happen, this would make perfect sense. Giving deliverables, having people deliver that strategic information or those briefs 24 to 48 hours. In the world of business, reports should be your best friend and PowerPoints should be your second best friend, in my opinion. Now, I like PowerPoints, they're cooler, but reports are much better when you actually sit down and read the information. If you listen to one of my previous Age of Jeremy episodes, I talked about this. That's what one of the things that made Jeff Bezos so amazing is he got rid of PowerPoints and he focused on people reading and understanding the information. Now, if you can't read, not saying that you can't read, but let's say reading's difficult. People have different comprehension. People have learning disabilities. People have dyslexia. That's fine. But nowadays, you can take a lot of that information and they can read it back to you, especially like something like Gemini Notebook. You put that bad boy in Gemini Notebook, that thing will make a podcast for you with the information. And you can get the information that you need. Now, additionally, skip level meetings. So direct conversations between senior leaders and frontline staff without middle managers present serve as a powerful diagnostic tool when structured around open-ended behavioral questions, such as if something concerns you, do you feel safe raising it, and what happens when people speak up on your team? They uncover psychological safety issues, friction points, or toxic microcultures before they harden into claims on attrition. Amy Edmondson research shows that psychological safety, the belief that you can speak up with ideas, questions, concerns, or mistakes without fear of repercussions, is the foundation of the learning zone, where high psychological safety and high performance standards exist simultaneously. And I'm going to be transparent and honest with you. I sometimes get frustrated when people come to me, and the fear and the thing that I'm ashamed of in this, because I said it's important for people to regret fucking shit and be ashamed of shit because they can learn from it, is I am ashamed sometimes of how I act in those specific situations. I had a leader ask me a question the other day, and I got a little bit frustrated because I didn't think that the question was relevant or that she needed to know anything about the specific issue. And so I got a little testy with her on that. And then I ended up calming down, apologizing, and then we talked down, worked out all good. But I felt ashamed of how I acted, and people shouldn't act that way because, again, leaders need to, and people need to be able to come to owners or other leaders and know that they can speak up without fear of any type of, I guess, discontent or, any type of toxic response. And we also must address the primary conduits of daily communication. And so when we think about emails and virtual channels, emails remain the most popular communication tool, with the average office worker receiving approximately 117 emails per day and sending 31. The resulting email overload is severe. 55% of professionals spend too much time crafting or deciphering messages, and 53% feel anxious about misinterpreting written communications. I'm going to say that again. 53% feel anxious about misinterpreting written communications, because just because there's shared messaging does not mean that there's shared understanding. Okay. And there's some really interesting ways to combat this. And I'm working to figure out ways to combat this as well, because you can't, there are things that you can email people for, but people talking on the phone and communicating and getting together for shared understanding is so super important. And to combat this, leading organizations are abandoning generic, bloated mass emails in favor of personalized, dynamic, segmented communication. What is that, do you say? I don't know. That's why we're learning about it together. Case studies from organizations like St. Elizabeth Healthcare and Paycor show that migrating from static formats to highly personalized and even AI generated digests significantly boost leadership and engagement. So other firms, such as a company called Sterling Bank, have successfully replaced long email newsletters with targeted digital screen ticker cards and alert channels to recover focus and boost productivity. Virtual channels present their own structural challenges. The average knowledge worker now spends 38.9 hours per week communicating across various platforms, and 76% of professionals report communicating across more channels than the previous year. This communication swirl creates a constant flow of notifications that makes it difficult for 60% of professionals to concentrate. In fact, employees juggling more than 10 software applications experience communications issues at the rate of 54%, compared to only 34% for those using 5 or fewer platforms. And I use way over 10. They're not all communicative. Some of them are, some of them aren't. Now, to improve virtual collaboration, teams must build a robust meeting map that outlines the focus, audience, frequency, and format of each meeting to prevent meeting fatigue. So furthermore, managers should establish clear team communication norms, such as using check for understanding prompts, what's your takeaway from this, and normalize clarifying questions. So one of the things that our chief operating officer for 3T and the chief operating officer for Freedom Insurance, one of the things that she does that works really good is for a teach back. Teach backs are so important for gauging whether or not someone understands something. But again, it goes back to them being able to teach that back maybe in a virtual meeting as opposed to, say, a virtual Teams text message or something like a WhatsApp message or something along those lines. So before I move on from this and close out the segment and the show today, I do want to go back to the email piece of it. The other problem with emails is one of the things that frustrates me is sometimes, unless there's being a question answered or asked, there's no really reason to respond to a specific email. Okay. So I understand what they're trying to say about the newsletter communications and making them maybe AI digestible. But a lot of the times of those 117 emails on average that people get a day, most of those are coming from different departments or CCing. And so one of the things that's very important is unless someone actually absolutely needs to know the situation, there's no reason to send them an email in regards to it. Or CC them on it. Secondly, there's no reason to respond to emails to know that you specifically got something unless maybe it's asked for and or someone's asking you directly for input in regards to a specific email. Okay. And so again, it's really about when we think about philosophy, I know that you're like, why are you talking about philosophy now? When we think about philosophy, one of the great reasons why I wanted to study philosophy in my life and get a PhD in it at one point, or at least something in the humanities, because I feel that that's better than business, but that's just my opinion. And so point is that one of the things that you learn when you're trying to understand logic or statements or writing, like specifically when it relates to philosophy, is that we take out a lot of like the fluff. And you might be saying there's a lot of fluff right now, and that's okay because my intention right now is to have fluff because it's a podcast. But when we're writing and we're trying to communicate directly, we want to make the statements as clear and concise as possible, which with my, fun studying and the minimal part-time that I have regarding linguistics and things of that nature, I have come to be more cautious of the words that I'm using, and I'm trying to get better. I'm a horrible text messenger because I text so fast. But again, just because I think that someone should know what I'm saying, that doesn't mean other people do, right? And so that's really important when it comes to the communication that we're communicating across team members and across families and our organizations, is we have to have a shared understanding of how we're communicating. And that's why getting better at speaking and getting better at writing and being more concise with our writing is so important for clear communication, especially if you're writing and doing things that are with the purpose of trying to change your life and to change the world. You should want to be better at those specific things. And that's what I hope in my life I can help people to understand as I continue to try to do that for myself. And in regards to the team's communications, I think that is you have to have ways and guidelines for how your team is communicating and where they're communicating and what you expect. One of the things that I've learned over these years working with CJV is, and this is that people need to let go of their expectations, right? Expectations come from when two people get together and they come up with a shared understanding, then it's okay to have expectations. But outside of that, if you have an expectation without someone understanding where your expectation is and what your expectation is, you shouldn't get upset for them or expect them to do anything because you haven't had a shared understanding on what is happening. And if you can do that with the way in which you communicate with your team and the way in which we communicate with our family and our spouses and our loved ones and everything around us, we can have a much better experience here on earth. So why at the beginning of this did I say the $1 trillion silence? So if we take a collective deep breath and translate those corporate playbook terms into real life, when you hear this miscommunication is costing American businesses so much money, up to $2 trillion a year, your brain is probably like, oh my God, that's ridiculous. Is that true? Obviously, it's probably true, but it's at a large scale. And it sounds like an imaginary number, but it's not. It's the $1 trillion silence, and we're paying for it every single specific day. And whether we're paying for it in money from a business, we're paying for it in our own relationships by not communicating and setting expectations of that communication. Someone, Donnie, and you can go check out his YouTube, Donnie Joseph. He has a great YouTube. He talks about like cryptocurrency and things of that nature from the ones that I've mainly watched. But he told me once, he said, Jeremy, you have like SOPs for your wife and your family. And while it's not to the extent that he made it sound like a standard operating procedure, but standard operating procedures are expectations. If you set expectations and policy for communicating with your partner and wife and how you're going to do it, you will have a much better experience with that individual and with every single individual that's in your timeline or your current timeline. And have you ever sat in a meeting, realized a project was heading straight off of a cliff, but decided to keep your mouth shut because the last person who raised a concern was treated like shit, or they're called a dick, or they're called, they're called something that you have a perception of them because of the way in which they stood up for something they believed in, what the business was doing. And that is where the $2 trillion goes. It's not a single massive catastrophe. It's a million tiny daily leaks of wasted hours, ignored mistakes, and silent frustration of not feeling comfortable enough to have integrity to stand up for the things that they believe in and speak up because people treat them like shit. And some of the people that treat those people just like I did when I spoke to the team member that I was talking about earlier. I feel horrible, right? Like I didn't say like call her names or anything. It was just like, I was very frustrated about the situation and they could tell we had to have a serious conversation. So let's talk about leadership. The stat that can blow your mind or blew my mind as I was reading over this is the alignment gap. 80% of leaders think their company's communication is clear. And that's like every single person that I've met always says that they're a good driver. I'm the first person that I know that says, I'm not a very good driver. I don't like driving. I should probably be better. It's probably not safe to drive with me. I should probably work on that. Okay. But everybody thinks that their communication is good because they are not looking at themselves objectively. And only 50% of employees agree that communication is clear. So that means if you have 10 people in your business, 5 of you think that the communication is shit. That's a massive gaping canyon of delusion. It's like a chef proudly marching out of the kitchen, thinking they've served a 5-star gourmet meal, while half the dining room is secretly spitting the food into their napkins. And if you're a leader, you have to stop assuming that because you sent an all staff email or you sent an all hands on deck that your job is done. Information always gets diluted. Employees don't want to read corporate memos. They want to talk to people, but managers are drowning. Gallup data shows that manager engagement has collapsed to 22%. We're asking our managers to build psychological safety, coach their teams, and run these complex strategic cascades while they themselves are burning out and ready to quit. So we have to communicate with the communicators. Give your managers a heads up. If you have a major announcement, don't stop it on the managers at the exact same second you drop it on the front line, right? You have to cascade things down to specifically to people. Give them 24 to 48 hours of process information. We just made a message that, that we are going to be doing a lot of organizational change. Well, not organizational changes. We're changing something due to something that we have to do. I'm not going to go into it here for our 3-2 Warrior Academy. And one of the team members was like, well, let's tell them about this on Friday. No, let's get a plan in place, right? Talk to their leaders about it, get everything organized, and then work it down the process so people don't constantly feel like things are coming at them and coming at them and coming at them. People need time to digest and process information. Things do not have to move rapidly. And one of the reasons why I think that we live that way, at least from my experience in our business, is because, again, we built a 7-figure company from no capital really at all. So kudos to us. But we have to explain the why before the what and the how, right? And compliance is easy to mandate, but commitment only happens when people understand why their work actually matters. So 117 emails are sent a day. 31 emails received a day. 31 emails sent every single day. We have turned our inboxes into high-stress digital triage centers. 53% of us report feeling actual anxiety about interpreting written messages. I have that happen to me all the time because I don't know if someone's pissed off. I don't know what they're trying to say. I say something. I'm assuming that they understand what I say, and then they take it out of context, and then they email me back. And we've all been there. You spend 20 minutes reading and rereading a 3-sentence email from your boss, trying to figure it out. And then it's like, let's discuss tomorrow. It means good job or you're fired, because people don't explain why they're meeting with people. One of the things that frustrates me the most. If you're going to meet with someone, put an agenda together of what we're meeting about. It's a common courtesy, and it helps us understand what we might have to prepare for the meeting that we're getting involved with. Okay. And then, as I mentioned again before, we're drowning in a sea of CC'd messages and bloated communications that nobody reads. Why are we sending out long messages and long emails to a workforce that is 80% mobile? Case studies show that the companies actually winning this battle are the ones ruthlessly cutting the noise. They are swapping generic mass emails for highly personalized, as I mentioned before, AI-generated digest, or completely replacing large newsletters with targeted digital screen ticker cards. Now, this is from the articles that I put together of things that people are doing. I have no idea how those specific things work, but I'm sharing them with you. So again, maybe you can take this and go and integrate it into your specific business. But again, that's where the communication is a giant swirl. I have a Slack, a Teams, a Zoom, email project trackers. I have Microsoft communications. I have Teams. I have WhatsApp. I have Facebook notifications. We have too many platforms of how we're communicating. In fact, inside of Age of Radio, I recently am going to be shutting down one of those and moving everything inside of Microsoft Teams so we can be communicating in one place. And so when we think about this, we need to think about how maybe we fix it. We need to start closing our loops. When you finish a call or a thread, what's your takeaway from this? And you could build like a meetings map, or you could schedule things for who's going to be taking care of them and when that follow-up is, right? And we're running a remote team, okay? There's 20 people that are coming to meetings that may not be paying attention inside of the meeting, right? So you have to make meetings engaging. And if there's a person that's there that technically doesn't need to be there, there's really no reason for them to be there. And any virtual activity is kind of like a complete waste of time if you don't debrief it, is what I've started to find out. So you have to find out like what happened, so what, and then now what is coming from these specific meetings. In fact, if you just start there from your communications and make sure that there are actionable items that are being taken away with a plan to follow up with those in between the next meeting, you'll be moving things on a lot faster. Now, at the end of the day, communication is not some fluffy, soft skill. It is literally the operating system of every single business and of every single family and of every single person. And if your operating system is buggy, if it's laggy and it's constantly crashing, your company is going to fail no matter how good your product is. So one of the things that you need to look at, that I'm going to be looking at, is writing down where are the things where communication is failing and what can I do? What can I do? Not what can other people do? What can I do to improve it? Speak assertively, listen with curiosity, and make sure that you are paying attention when you are in a meeting and you are communicating. And again, I'm just talking to myself because these are things that I need to do better as well. So hopefully there was some insight into some of these things. I'm going to take some of this and look at how I can be better. And again, if I remember, I'm going to share how I get better as I move along with this podcast, as I've been doing for almost 9 years. So again, thank you so much for listening. And as I always say, be thankful, grateful, and kind. We'll talk with you soon. Bye.
Tell me, how does it feel? Tell me, how does it feel? I see the meaning of life in your eyes. It's like swimming in the ocean at night. And when I'm with you, it's like I'm on fire. Nothing is real outside myself and your smile lines. Bring me down with sweet soft sound. My name, the way it sparkles when it leaves your mouth. You fill my soul